Good for you, sir, for defending this. And this is a hugely important case. So how do you think it went yesterday?
I think it went great. You never want to prognosticate. The justices will spend months talking through this, and you just never know how it's going to turn out. But we put on a very strong case. I thought the questions were probing in a way that gets to the truth of the matter, and I'm looking forward to the court's decision.
We heard in that soundbite it just played with Justice Alito, the other side admit that gender affirming care, again, this is a misnomer, does not reduce suicides. It does not reduce suicide. So this is what they've been telling. Like, the truth comes out in court. But what they've been saying everywhere in the public eye is we have to allow these puberty blockers and these cross-sex hormones because these kids will kill themselves. They will kill themselves. They use this to manipulate parents. And there in front of the U.S. Supreme Court, it's admitted right there by a so-called trans attorney that this so-called care does not reduce suicides. What a moment.
I think it's the most important thing that happened in the oral argument. Usually the briefing is what really drives the outcome in the case, and the argument is just to cover a few little loose ends. But we've heard for years you can either have a live son or a dead daughter, and parents have been essentially threatened, and kids have kept hearing over and over again that suicide was the appropriate reaction to not transitioning. And of course, suicide is a social contagion phenomenon. The more kids hear it, the more risk there is. And so to have the truth out there for everybody to hear on the record that suicide is not, in fact, the expected outcome, that this treatment, so-called treatment, does nothing to address the instances of suicide was huge. That's going to make a lasting difference in this conversation.
And then you've got Sonia Sotomayor comparing the castration of little boys to there are risks in taking an aspirin. Here's that.
And the question of how many minors have to have their bodies irreparably harmed for unproven benefits is one that is best left.
I'm sorry, counselor. Every medical treatment has a risk, even taking aspirin. There is always going to be a percentage of the population under any medical treatment that's going to suffer a harm. So the question in my mind is not, do policymakers decide whether one person's life is more valuable than the millions of others who get relief from this treatment? The question is, can you stop one sex from the other?
Let me ask you something, General. There'd be no question that you could pass a law in Tennessee saying you can't sell fentanyl in pill form over the counter right next to Band-Aids. There'd be no question that you would be allowed to do that in Tennessee and every state. So clearly there is the ability to regulate certain medications and drugs, even something as gentle potentially as an aspirin. So this is a sliding scale. The fentanyl would be a no. The aspirin can be on the shelf. And the question is, where does the gender-affirming so-called care, medications and so on, fall? Can you explain to the audience why the puberty blockers and the cross-sex hormones are closer to the fentanyl than they are to the aspirin?
Be my pleasure. So every systematic review of the evidence has shown little to no benefit for kids from these procedures, from puberty blockers, from hormone treatments, from surgeries. It's still relatively new. Most of the cases have been coming up recently. The numbers have exploded, but all the research out there, when systematically reviewed and analyzed, shows no benefit. And meanwhile, the risks are huge. Kids on these drugs face the permanent loss of their fertility, the permanent loss of their sexual function for the rest of their lives. They face, depending on which treatment we're talking about, tumors, blood clots, cognitive impairment for the rest of their lives, bone density disorders. So these are serious conditions, and children are not in a position to make those big decisions. We don't let them get tattoos. We don't let them use alcohol. We don't let them consume tobacco products because they're too young to fully appreciate the effect that will have on their future. Meanwhile, these are incredibly consequential drug regimes that will affect their body forever and ever. the research shows that it's not actually treating the condition it's purported to treat, and the risks are enormous. And that is why Tennessee outlawed these for kids.
This is a lengthy exchange, but I am going to play it, an exchange between Justice Alito and the Solicitor General for the Biden administration. Biden administration is on the trans team, not the Tennessee team. That's about to change when Trump takes over, but right now we are where we are. So he really went after her on what I think he believed was a misrepresentation in their brief to the court. Take a listen to this, SOT 36.
Well, can I ask you a question about the state of medical evidence at the present time? In your petition, you made a sweeping statement, which I will quote: "Overwhelming evidence establishes that the appropriate gender-affirming treatment with puberty blockers and hormones directly and substantially improves the physical, psychological well-being of transgender adolescents with gender dysphoria." That was in November 2023. Now, even before then, the Swedish National Board of Health and Welfare wrote the following: "They currently assess, quote, that the risks of puberty blockers and gender-affirming treatment are likely to outweigh the expected benefits of these treatments," which is directly contrary to the sweeping statement in your petition. After the filing of your petition, of course, we saw the release of the Cass report in the United Kingdom, which found a complete lack of high-quality evidence showing that the benefits of the treatments in question here outweigh the risks. And so I wonder if you would like to stand by the statement that you made in your petition, or if you think it would now be appropriate to modify that and withdraw the statement that there is overwhelming evidence establishing that these treatments have benefits that greatly outweigh the risks and the dangers.
I, of course, acknowledge, Justice Alito, that there is a lot of debate happening here and abroad about the proper model of delivery of this care and exactly when adolescents should receive it and how to identify the adolescents for whom it would be helpful. But I stand by that there is a consensus that these treatments can be medically necessary for some adolescents, and that's true no matter what source you look at.
So she didn't disavow her clearly false statement to the court about the alleged overwhelming evidence that the benefits outweigh the harms.
So what we're looking at in this situation is a conflict between what the evidence tells us and what the consensus tells us. And we've got this manufactured consensus where very biased activists have managed to get all of the major medical organizations to buy in to their approach through a very circular process. Meanwhile, they're suppressing research showing the actual efficacy of this for kids, and they are ignoring developments in countries that have pioneered these procedures that used to make them very available to kids and now are restricting them because they looked at the evidence. And Steve Marshall, the Alabama Attorney General, had an amicus brief in this case that really laid out the process and that showed that the medical guidelines that are being used here were written not by doctors, but largely by policy advocates, by social justice lawyers, and by people within the Biden administration who are lobbying for the most ideologically aligned outcomes rather than delving into the evidence and making an evidence-based decision about what's best for kids.
It's truly horrifying how our medical organizations have been captured by these activists who are trying to set policy for our children, for the chopping off of body parts for the most vulnerable among us. And then confused parents go to a psychiatrist, a child psychiatrist or psychologist for help, and they are put on a path of severe danger.
Yeah, and I mean, it goes to a broader problem with America's elite, which maybe is outside the scope of this conversation, but they are just divorced from reality. We're supposed to embrace evidence-based medicine. We're supposed to look at the evidence when making those determinations, and this is kind of a Trojan horse. they dress it up to look legitimate in every possible way. But it's empty in the middle. I guess it's not like the Trojan horse at all, actually. But
Yeah, right.
they're transporting these radical ideological beliefs in the guise of legitimate medical research, and that is having a really profound impact on thousands of kids. The numbers have gone up spectacularly, very dramatically, a 4,000% increase in adolescent girls looking for hormone treatments, according to one researcher. And as the numbers go up for unexplained reasons, more and more evidence comes out showing that this is harmful. Other countries have pumped the brakes. And here we are with the White House, with the major medical associations, with the American Bar Association, with all sorts of very powerful institutional players in this country pushing in the other direction, essentially trying to get everyone to ignore the evidence and pursue this ideological end at great cost to children.
Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. The app shows whether you're burning fat or carbs and provides tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workout, sleep, and stress management. All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning to understand your metabolism. Based on your measurements, Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for the day. You can breathe into it before and after workouts as well, and meals, to get real-time insights, with Lumen providing tips to give you all the latest information about your health game. Lumen can also track your cycle, adjusting its recommendations to maintain a healthy metabolism through hormonal shifts, helping you keep your energy levels up and stave off cravings. So if you want to stay on track with your health this holiday season, go to lumen.me/Megyn to get 15% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/Megyn for 15% off your purchase. Lumen makes a great gift too. This is probably something they won't be expecting. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.